Welcome to the David Lyon podcast. We just wrapped up the first episode with my friend Aljaz. We had a super juicy conversation on the topics of sex, boundaries, knowing what you want, what usually tends to get in the way of having really pleasurable sexual experiences, kind of going through different layers of that. What has helped me to really have sexual experiences that felt deep and meaningful for me, and kind of to orient towards like, why do I even have sex? Like, what's the aim of it? So I hope you enjoy this episode. I definitely enjoyed it a lot, and let's jump right in.
I want to start with something that you mentioned, like, I think it was more than 2 years ago already. And I don't know in which setting it was, but it stayed with me over all this time. And what was the story behind it, or what's the like main um what happened was you were explaining how you sat with your partner behind the dining table, and somehow you find this anger arising in yourself, like you were being really pissed off. And then you said, like, you didn't know what is happening, and then on one point you realized, I cannot feel you. It was something like that. I don't
Hmm.
know what exactly, but I cannot feel you. And I see myself so many times
Hmm.
coming on that, like, being frustrated in relating to my partner, and then I'm putting that on her, and that obviously is not helping because it's like getting even more frustrating, and she's getting like even more closed down. um so the question that appears is like, or the exploration that is like, how much is there, like, focus on yourself, like you be connected to yourself, and how much of that longing, is like, I have to connect to myself, and this feeling that I'm really longing for is feeling myself and my inner woman and my inner child is there longing for something that I want to get from her, or I'm projecting that onto her.
Hmm.
But then on the other hand, like, what is it's like the exploration of what is like a healthy balance between, okay, I have to find it, like, inwardly focus on yourself, do this, like, connect. And then a point came where you said, like, no, like, what the fuck, I really need this from you also,
Hmm.
like, so where is this, like, a balance where you say, like, stop, and this is actually what I need from you in order for this relationship to work.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a super juicy question. Um, where like there's definitely no general answer to me, because for example, like my pattern would be I have to deal with this by myself. I have to somehow transform this in myself to be worthy of being in relationship.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. That's how it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, so knowing this pattern of myself and having had a lot of conversations with my partner where we would encourage each other to bring this stuff in rather than like withholding it, um, in that instance that you're mentioning and in others, would probably lead me more to communicating it. And there's so many layers to this. Okay, so one is, there's so many different ways I can experience this, what you just described. Like I can just notice in myself, um, I'm not feeling my partner, and this is the emotion that it brings up. And I kind of, I still feel clear and connected to myself. And so when I'm in that place and I communicate it, it's probably going to be easier for my partner to hear this. If it triggers stuff in me, and it triggers, my abandonment wound, um, and fear, um, and I don't own that, like these wounds were already there, right? Like she with her pattern, and I think like it's quite a common pattern, let's say in general, of women, of course not only, but this kind of withdrawing, right? Like in a way it's a form of passive aggression, is like withholding love. And I'm not saying like they're doing it out of evil intentions or anything like that, but like it's I think it's a pattern that many men will relate to. um so okay, so one thing is, can I notice these wounds that this is touching and like own them? Like, these are my wounds, you're not responsible for these wounds, you're triggering them right now. um right, so there are a lot of layers. Like there's something that I notice that she's doing and I can name that this is what I'm observing. It might still be that it's a projection, but I would say like the more that you do embodiment work, the more you notice the difference between, okay, am I just in my own story, or am I actually perceiving like there's something in the space between us or something happening in her that I can notice. And then can I notice, so can I notice the difference between what I'm noticing in the space and like how my own past is, like how I kind of put it on top and that like attach meaning, for example, to her behavior. Like, why is she doing that? Like, what did I do wrong? Or what do I need to do to get it back? Right. And so like, I mean, the way that I enjoy being in relationship is that I can actually can share these wounds, right? So it's not like something I have to figure out by myself. But yeah, the task is, those are my wounds. Like, she's not responsible for that.
Mm.
So um yeah, man, it's tricky. Like, it's really tricky territory. Like it really requires to stay open all this time. Like in relating, for me, nothing is like rock solid. Like any perception that you have, you don't know exactly how much of this is like exactly what is actually happening, how much is like you just projecting in. So it requires this kind of constant openness to uh, readjust, right? Like if new information comes in, if she shares where she's actually at, like, does it match my perception? Does it not match my perception, right? Um, yeah. So like, to answer your question around this balance, I would say it depends on the agreements that you have with the person that you're relating with.
Mm. It's so fascinating how our minds are, what is in front of us, how our minds are interpreting what is going on, so that it will somehow be translated in the story that is known to us. Like it's like,
Mm,
for example, I've been listening a podcast from a mentor of mine, which I really admire, and he said something like, um, "Hey, if I go on a date with a girl and she's drinking a glass of wine with me, and then she wants to order another one, and I communicate, hey, I don't want you to drink another glass of wine because maybe then because I want to feel you. I want to, I want to be present with you. So I don't want to have sex or like even communicate with you if I'm not able to feel you and be there with you present. So I want
mm,
you to be there." And then he said, if she is drinking another glass of wine, then after I communicating that, then she's not my woman. And then on another occasion, for example, if a woman is not accepting my power, then what the fuck am I still doing there in the relationship? And
mm,
then my mind would translate that, you know, then having a occasion with my partner, or like an ongoing situation where then I would interpret as like, no, she's not my woman. She's not actually like someone that I want to be in a relationship with, because she's not doing what I want. Yeah. So then was this like a really small child coming up that it's not really healthy, you know. And then when I project that onto her, or when I am in that space, she can feel that, and then she can become even more closed, and then it's even harder for her to open up. So then in a way, like, yeah, like in a way it's like really tricky, because then I have to solve that somehow on my own and take up the responsibility of not projecting, and then so that I can offer a loving space. But then, like, the reality check, like, no one is really perfect, you know. And it's like projecting that perfectionism onto someone, um I don't know, like it's really, really tricky and challenging. And I feel like so many relationships, just because not seeing that the projection and the mind that has its own patterns, like so many relationships are falling apart, that
Mm.
because people say, you know, he's like that and she's like that, and we don't offer ourselves spaces to, yeah, or to accept the other one as he is, as he's coming in the relationship. And
Mhm.
that is again like tricky territory. um
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just responding to this example that you brought about drinking alcohol. I think for me, like if I were with someone who like regularly drinks a lot of alcohol, like for me, it is a turnoff. And so here's the difference. I can have clear boundaries around that. I can be clear about what what are the spaces that I want to share with my partner, and like what's a no-go, for example, getting drunk. But I can still accept the other person, because like they don't owe me that they fit into that. It just might mean that, and this is the work, is like really becoming clear of like what are non-negotiables for you.
mm,
What are things that you're like, hey, like I see that whatever this matters to you, or this is how you do things, and I just notice it really doesn't work for me.
mm,
And yeah, that's scary.
mhm,
It's scary because like each time something comes up in relating where something my partner does is a no-go for me, it triggers all my fears of like losing her. But then again, if I don't own that, what kind of relationship is that? Like I'm selling myself.
mhm, mm,
So I
yes,
think we can go too far with this like projections and like, oh, we just all gotta own it. Like, yeah, but they're just also things that matter to us, and
mhm,
like things that I want and things that I don't want. And that doesn't mean the other person is wrong. It just means like, hey, that's my life. That's how I want to spend time with people.
mm,
Like it's not just about accepting, or well, rather it is also about accepting what you want, accepting who you are, accepting the life that you want to live. And so no other person owns you that. It's more like you owe yourself that you make sure that your life actually turns in that direction of what you really want. And then from that place, it's like you can invite people into your life. You can say, hey, like this is my life and it's fucking awesome. There's so many things that I love about it. Um, Come with me, right? which is a very different frame from like, okay, can I transform this in me so that we can stay together? And what if this is just a projection, right? Like there's a danger of like just constantly questioning yourself and your like own boundaries. It's
Exactly.
important to do that, but it's not the only thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be this place of substance of like, this is who I am. Like, that's why I've been talking about anger, because I see people in spiritual circles, they don't do that. It's like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I don't want. It can change, but there's substance there. Like, you are something. You're not nothing. You have particular preferences, particular qualities. So live according to them.
And this brings up so much in ourselves, doesn't it? Like, for a person to be able to do that, it it really brings up a lot. And this is why the vast majority of people are still not, and I don't know if I want to go into that direction right now, but it's somehow, it's up to a point, it's much more comfortable and like just stay where you are than like expressing and clearly saying, hey, this is what I want. And but the thing is that a woman actually loves that, like she wants that kind of man, or like deep down, at least this is what I heard. Yeah, like in, like, deep down she wants a man that is able to say no and to have its own direction and his own, like, stay in his ground. And she will she will like try all these things to test him, or to like, at least this is what David Data is writing in his books, right? Like, the way of the superior man and all this, um like, she will test him if he is strong enough to kind of like have a like clear direction, and if he knows what he wants.
Yeah, I think at this point it's important to make kind of distinction. So, like everything I've shared up until now has not been in the context of like masculine, feminine dynamics, but more of just relating in general, like things that you could apply to any relationship. And those are just two different ways of, in a way, those are two different conversations. And like we could go into both, or like both are interesting, but like it's a bit of a different flavor, because when I
Can you
talk about,
explain what you mean by
yeah,
that?
sure. So when I talk about, I mean, like everything I've said until now, it didn't really matter if this was happening between a man and a woman or two people of any gender. So this wasn't specific to masculine, feminine dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just, some things are just principles of relating.
Okay.
So I just want to make that distinction because, yeah, I'm very happy to talk about like more specifically masculine, feminine dynamics. Um, and obviously relating is more complex than just like, oh, the man embodies the masculine and the woman the feminine and the whatever, like those stereotypes of like the woman just wants to surrender and the man just has to, like, relating is more complex than that. And I just want to set this context of, some things make sense to talk about in just a larger context of relating, where it's not so much about like, this is the feminine pole, this is the masculine pole, this is how they're relating. And other things, just like their place is exactly in this dance between the masculine and the feminine. Yeah. And so just to clarify that further, if I look at what we talked about in the beginning in terms of this, like these projections, let's say like between a man and a woman, then like being in the masculine pole in that moment could be to notice like, oh, she's withdrawing, and like noticing, oh yeah, and this triggers kind of my drama of I'm being abandoned and like the small boy. And like there is a capacity, I believe, in each man to, it's almost like to just look through this, what's going on, and like communicate more non-verbally than verbally, that like you notice what's going on and you don't take it, like you don't take the drama seriously, like you don't take her withdrawal seriously, and it's almost like through your pouring out love, she snaps out of this as well. It's like you don't get caught into the drama. And it's like in some way communicating, like, come on, let's just drop this. It's not always possible. Like maybe sometimes it's more called for to actually give space to like whatever the young parts that are coming up in either of the partner. But sometimes this is really juicy, is to just be like, like your partner says in some way they're not feeling loved, and you just like pour so much love into them, whatever, through being physical, that they like cannot take it serious any longer, their drama. And you just help them like open up and relax and feel safe. Yeah.
Let's touch the other topic that we've been also discussing 2 days ago, the one of more like intimate relating in sex or like making love. Boy, this is like so many things opens in that space. Like so many things are like, just for one example would be like coming to her and noticing like something is like, I want something from her, which is like, I'm not saying it's wrong, it's just like I don't want to come from that space because it doesn't feel good. And then again is this, question, like the most general question that I can come up with was like, just someone please tell me how, like how the fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, or like just exploration on this.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes up when I hear that is like, there's an important distinction for me to be made between wanting something and being needy, as in potentially falling apart if I don't get what I want, because those are two very different spaces. Because generally, and I think that's what we talked about 2 days ago as well, what I said is like, in the sexual arena, wanting is beautiful. Like as a man, to show yourself with what you really want, like what you really desire, and to um like feel entitled to get that, like that creates a lot of polarity. Now that takes a lot of trust. Like you need to know that your woman is into that, right? And you need to be able to sense like when she's not into that. But if you have that ground, like that's so beautiful. It's so beautiful when you bring in like your lust and like your animal side of like just like, "Oh, I just want to fuck you." Like that can be really beautiful, which is very different from like, in a way, like what I heard you say was, I want something, but I feel really like uncomfortable or ashamed about the fact that I want something.
Not
And so,
owning
yeah,
the desire. Yeah.
yeah. And so that she senses. So then she's like, if you don't feel comfortable with what you want, how should I feel comfortable with that? Like, that's like, I mean, that's what's, I think, a big part of what's creepy when men approach women is like they're uncomfortable themselves about their desire. So they're like, how the fuck is a woman supposed to feel good from like someone who's like, hey, I'm really attracted to you, but I'm not really okay with the fact unless you tell me that I am okay. Like, how is she supposed to enjoy that?
Hmm.
It's basically like giving all the power into her hands and say, please accept me. And she's like, just get the fuck away from here. It's like, it's like, yeah, like it's in a way like reenacting like boy to mother relationship stuff, and it's not like two adults meeting. And so that's the difference. Like if I feel grounded in myself, and I feel like there's a sense of maturity in me as to how I relate to life, like I understand no woman owns me anything. She doesn't owe me to like appreciate my approach or anything like that.
Hmm.
So I need to have that space inside of me of being like you're a sovereign being. However you respond to this is fine. Doesn't mean it's not going to affect me. Like I might feel disappointed, but I'm not going to blame her for that.
Hmm.
And so another way to look at this is like, so if I have a desire to approach my woman and whatever, like to touch her physically or to be close with her or to kiss her, how distorted is that impulse? How much is it like, well, there's something going in this direction. There's something in me going into the opposite direction. There are like three other parts that just want to run away, right? Like that's what she senses.
Hmm.
It's very different from being like, I mean, like, it's not about like not being scared or not being uncomfortable, but it's like, am I withholding parts of myself or am I like fully going in? And this actually brings me to something that like this really has been a big change for me in my sexual relating is like learning that I can bring anything into the sexual space, any emotion. In my experience, it's always more supportive for the shared space to bring it in than to withhold it because she's going to feel it anyway and it's just going to affect the space. And so like if I feel ashamed, okay, so then I feel ashamed while making out and that's okay. I give that space. Or like if I penetrate her and I notice I'm close to ejaculating and I feel like this um whatever huge conflict inside of me going on, it's like I kind of want to ejaculate but I don't really want to and I don't feel like I can stop it, and just bring all of that in, right? Just be present with that. And the thing is, the more all of these things have space, the more likely it is that you will not ejaculate super quickly because the energy is flowing.
Hmm.
And so I think there's a lot that we as men have learned to like withhold, and that just distorts the whole sexual experience, because obviously like when I hold something back, there's less connection, there's less trust, there's less flow of energy. Yeah. So yeah, this has changed my sexual experience so much. It's like nothing that comes up in me is in the way. Which brings up an interesting question: is like, what the fuck is the way? Like, what's the movie in my head that I'm trying to follow? Like, where's this supposed to
Exactly,
go?
exactly. And now
How is this supposed to look?
touching the topic of, you know, having all this stuff inside of our minds, how sexual act should look like, how it's not supposed to look like, what is good, what is not good. Um, like we have all this, as men, we have on a very early age like these role models that can last for like hours, and you know,
Mm,
for just one example. And now I'm smiling, but it's like really distorting the way that we experience intimacy, like the way that we, and then we go into the sexual act and we withhold all these parts, uh, from, like, we don't want to be seen like weak, and it's not okay to have a premature ejaculation, and then it's wrong to, like, and then we want to perform, and then this is killing the intimacy anyway. And so it's like I see in my own practice how that has been like a really challenging, um, how to put this, like, to overcome this, like, body memory, or how to call it, like body has its own memory that it's following like in automated process. So like it's really challenging in a way to learn, or to kind of like overcome this and just allow it to, um like you said, to like be present with all these parts that are coming up.
yeah.
um yeah.
Um, I think like what's really helpful there is to really take time to ask yourself, like, what the fuck do I actually want? Like, what do I
Mhm.
really long for in sex? And so, like, if I think of that, what I long for is, like, for me, sex is, next to having your own business, is like, it's a spiritual path for me. Like, it's a way to have experiences that I wouldn't otherwise have, like experiences of union, of deep connection, of ecstasy, of um, flow, of uh, like like life in form of the feminine just unraveling in front of me. It's like showing its whole range of expressions and this whole beauty. Like that for me is probably the most touching thing that I experience. It's like when I sex with my partner and she's just like, she's so open, like she's so receptive to me, and she's like so um surrendered in a way that like the amount of beauty that's in the space and the amount of energy that's in the space and orgasmicness is just like I mean, it's a lot to take. And
Mhm.
so that's what like matters to me. If I go beyond the layers of you know, doing a good performance or being able to fuck for a couple of hours, uh, or even like giving her a lot of orgasms, like those are more like shallower levels of sex. That doesn't mean that it's wrong, but there are things that matter more to me, because if I'm in the mode of like I want to give her pleasure, then like bringing in all of my emotions, like ultimately it will bring her more pleasure, but like there's not a direct link between those two. Whereas if I'm like I want to experience union and just like such deep rawness between us that there's just like no more fucking barriers, then it's like the link is more direct. Like, yeah, well, then I gotta bring all of my fucking self in.
And what is the biggest obstacle in that, or like the biggest challenge, or what would you say to someone that has just started to, for example, investigate that in himself and he basically has no idea?
I mean, that's a great place to be. And if you have no idea, that already means you've let go of the idea that you
No
know.
idea, no idea how to find out what you actually want, for example. Like
Uh-huh.
you have a lot of ideas from before, but somehow they are not working anymore, or you want more.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. Um, I mean, I think one thing that's really important is to just acknowledge like this takes time. Like I think because of like so many coaches offering like 8-week programs to like master your ejaculation, all this, we have this idea that this is something that you can switch in a couple of weeks. I don't think you can. Like that's deep work. Like you also don't expect to meditate for 10 days and suddenly like you can access like the most, like the deepest, most profound experiences. You understand that this takes practice. And I would say to some degree, this is true for these sexual states as well. So that's one thing, just to like be patient with yourself, right? Like if I look back, how like what my experience was of pleasuring myself or having sex 2-3 years ago to where I'm at now, I'm like, holy fucking shit. Like those are like different galaxies that have not met before. And I know that there's still so much more to explore. But like back then I was so impatient about this. I was so like dissatisfied with myself. And so that just adds on more pressure to just be like, this takes time, but if you stay committed to this, like it's gonna change 100%.
mm,
It's not going to change overnight. You're going to have experiences that are not fun. But like, if you're serious about this, like you're going to transform your sexual experience to places you didn't know even know were possible. So that's one thing that I would say. Um, One other thing is like talk to people who have more experience. Talk to people who inspire you in this, because um, that can accelerate the path. It definitely has for me, like talking to my mentor about these things. Um, Even just to know that it's possible what I'm longing for, like to see it embodied in someone. It's like, ah, okay, like I'm not imagining this. It's not like just a dream that I have, it's a possibility. So that's another thing. Um, and I would say like this is another thing that I think we men tend to go into, is to believe like having amazing sex is in a way like a solo performance. It's like something that we just have to like master our cock and then everything will be fine. I think it has a lot to do with the connection that you have with your sexual partner. And yeah, like in a way for me, the bedroom is an expression of your relationship. And so anything where you're withholding in your relationship, and any place where there's a lack of trust, a lack of communication, a lack of like an aligned direction, I think is going to show up in the bedroom. So it's like um, you can't just do this by yourself. This also takes a lot of communication and opening up, and maybe even sharing like some of the struggles that you're facing, and maybe asking for support, like It can be so healing to inform your partner and say like, hey, this is what I'm playing with while having sex right now. Like, hey, I'm right now exploring not ejaculating, and so I'd really love your support in that. Right? Like,
Mm.
the, we don't have to like it's just getting out of this like performance thing where we have to like maintain some kind of image in front of our sexual partner because that's like what will get them off. It's such a distorted image because they sense anyway, like they can sense all your insecurities, they can sense all the places you're withholding, like it's already there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every woman that you're with will be able and willing to share a space with you where all of this is welcome. Like, I mean, all power to however people want to have sex. Some people just like for them it's more just fun and something mechanical. Like for me, this never worked. Like I didn't enjoy sex this way. It just wasn't pleasurable for me. So like find sexual partners who are into the same things as you are.
Yeah.
Because again, like if they want something
Now
else,
we
they're
come
not they're
back to
not wrong.
boundaries.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm. Yeah. Like if I would share my own experience, I would say like just please be patient with yourself. Like before you even start, like just commit to like loving kindness and patience to yourself, because these patterns of like beating myself up or like shaming myself for not performing or having to perform or being then like it causes a lot of pressure um, on this whole exploration and the whole process. So
Yeah.
what you're saying is really really useful. But then yeah, like just before you start, like I would really just say like just be patient and kind to yourself as
Yeah.
much as
That,
you can, because
yeah.
otherwise, even if, for example, even if I do not ejaculate, I suppress the energy in myself with that, like with
Mm.
with this pressure,
Mm.
and then it's basically doesn't even matter because my needs and desires are not going to be met anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
it's better than to just go and experiment and do whatever you want and first do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Like first, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, like honor your own experience more than anyone else's perspective or opinion. So,
Oh yes.
um, like not ejaculating is not always the best thing. Like sometimes release is necessary, and so okay, honor your own experience and learn from experience. Like you know, try it out, see how it is to ejaculate a couple of times. Like actually, don't just take what you heard somewhere or read somewhere as like that's the truth. Is like no, make your reality your truth and learn from that, because that's part of the self-hatred that we have, is that we take other people's opinion more seriously than our own experience, and so it creates like a um, it creates a lot of confusion because it's like, oh, I just ejaculated and it feels kind of good. Like I feel good right now. But no, actually I'm not supposed to feel good right now because ejaculating makes me weak already. It creates like this whole mind fuck where it's just like just listen to your fucking experience. And maybe you will notice the next day you feel hungover and great. Now you know.
Mm. Yeah, but just allow it to be your own experience and kind of like,
Yes.
and now we are touching the also like a very potent and juicy topic, at least for me, which is like really being your own authority and being
Yes.
power and be like you be the one who tells what works and what doesn't work for you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, like just already to come to that place where you are able to even like notice that, for example, sometimes is already a success because we've been so much like um I'm talking we, but I'm talking from my own experience, like so compromised that we do not even listen to our bodies anymore and our minds or like our thoughts, and we all always like yeah, is this correct, is this not correct, is this okay to do that, is not okay, and
Yeah.
like again
Yeah.
um,
That's where sex becomes so brutal because it mirrors that back exactly to you. Like in my experience, if I'm in a space where something is not welcome in the sexual space, um, something is missing in a way, right? So as if I'm in a place of like, this is good if it comes up and this is bad if it comes up, I'm not in a space of openness to what is actually happening.
hmm,
And so, for example, I think this is a really big one actually. Not everything that happens while having sex is sexy or sexual, in my experience. Like, it absolutely doesn't have to be. Like, sometimes it can switch really quickly from, wow, it's like there's a lot of arousal, and suddenly it gets super tender and soft, and there's actually not that much sexual tension, or like you're super hard and then your penis gets more flaccid, and that's like, like allowing all of this, not just having this like build up and it all just goes towards in one direction, but just like be open to where this is meant to go. Like some of the craziest sexual experiences that I had from the outside were not sexual at all. Like, it was both of us wearing clothes and like moving really slowly with each other, but the intensity that we experienced in
mm-hmm.
it was like we were both like, what the fuck just happened?
Yep.
So yeah, you're not in control of this. Like being the masculine part during sex is not being in control. It can be at times, it can be super fun to like be in the dominant place, but like you have to at the same time have a level of surrender. I think that's what I love about sex is like, man, just you cannot operate from a concept of how this is supposed to be or how a man is supposed to be. Like you have to really be attuned to what is happening.
Mm-hmm. Sense and feel and follow that.
Yeah, and be present with it, not run away.
Yeah. For me, it feels like it would be really nice to close. Like it feels like we covered almost like we touched a little bit of like basis, but it feels like uh, yeah, yeah, it feels like a nice place to wrap up for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good.
Is there anything else that you would add, or it's like a life insight, or would want to be shared?
I just noticed how much I love this topic, and I've I've consciously up until now um, have not shared my experiences and perspectives because Like there's so much information about this out there, and this I find a lot of it not useful, and so I really don't want to contribute to this confusion to men. But actually, like in the recent months, and yeah, I would say like I've come more to a place where I feel like there are things where I feel like this can really be a contribution for the exploration of men. So that's why I also agreed to have the conversation. And so yeah, I love this stuff.
Yeah, like it's really important topic and super important work that you do also. Like I'm so grateful for our connection and from things that our connection brought to my life. So yeah, I would just like maybe for people that are listening this right now and would like to try it or reach out or like get to know more about you or your work, how can they find you? Where would you like them to be reaching out to you? I mean, I know for myself, but
Yeah. I guess the easiest is to write an email to David at evolving-man.com.
all right.
Yeah. We can put it somewhere. Some contact information we'll put somewhere around this video for people to find. Yeah.
Thanks
Yeah.
for
Thank you, Aljaz. Touches me to hear that.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing that.